During my childhood, I watched Mad Max probably half a dozen times. Not the one from 2015, but the 1981 version with Mel Gibson. It is one of my mom's favorites, so it was kind of always there. Yet I've never really given the plot much thought. So when Fury Road dropped in 2015, I went to the movies pretty open-minded. On one hand, I liked the originals, but didn't put them so high on a pedestal that a remake couldn't touch them. So I went with my best friend at the time, and we were impressed with the first few scenes. The visuals were amazing, and the lack of dialogue was apt, or so I thought. 15 minutes in, I proclaimed, "This is some Kubrick level stuff." On a side note, I only repeated those words once more in the 8 years since. Half an hour into the movie, I wished it had more dialogue. 45 minutes in, I was almost pissed. There are only so many ways spears, cars, and sand dunes can interact. I desperately needed some context and character development, but none happened. An hour or so in, I completely gave up on the story. Don't get me wrong, I had a blast because my friend and I were laughing our behinds off. We invented a game where we both bet how many seconds till the next explosion and the winner gets the next Skittle. Needless to say, we ran through the entire pack before the end. The story seemed so stupid, I felt embarrassed. I knew my mom eagerly awaited to hear my impressions on the newest addition to the series. I vividly remember having a choice of either lying that it's good or telling her one of her favorites is so empty I nearly choked on candy. Now, you might think I'm about to bash Mad Max for the next 20 minutes, but quite to the opposite. You see, almost a decade passed, and the way I see it now, it wasn't the movie that was stupid. It was me. In this video essay, I don't want to just mindlessly parrot all the endless praise and awards the camera got. I want to explain why the story of Mad Max truly matters. I'll explain how close our society is at all times to what the movie depicts. I might sound a bit conspiratorial at times, but every single claim I make will be backed by online sources you can check yourself. With the intro out of the way, let's dive into the world of Mad Max. The story takes place in a post-ecocide world. We, the humans, irreversibly damaged the planet. I want to stress how close we might be to this exact scenario. I'm not talking about the gradual climate change, nor a slim chance of an asteroid hit. We are almost 2 years into the Ukraine versus Russia war, and a certain someone has given multiple public statements how nuclear weapons are at the ready. You might think this is far-fetched, even for him, but some of his compatriots certainly beg to differ. Quite a few Russian refugees moved to my city recently, and most inquired about bomb shelters and protocols in place. God knows his friends are also developing weapons of mass destruction. But surely the other side is here to save the day. No way nuclear codes are controlled by a severely neurologically compromised person, someone who falls down the stairs all the time and falls asleep mid-sentence, mumbles words.
If it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway. Because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread.
Someone who, during their prime, lobbied to eradicate entire nations in a quote, Japanese-German style.
We should go on the ground. We should announce there's going to be American casualties. We should go to Belgrade and we should have a Japanese, German-style occupation of that country.
And if you think that, quote-unquote, both sides are a gunpowder barrel, wait till you learn about the third. The side you might not have even heard of. I'll quote the main character from the Mr. Robot series. There's a powerful group of people out there that are secretly running the world. I'm talking about the guys no one knows about, the ones that are invisible. The top 1% of the top 1%, the guys that play God without permission. The side that is completely unelected and unaccountable yet rules us all. Whether the national elections are rigged or not, the winner will dress exactly as told and dance to the tune they play. Macron, Trudeau, and Schultz are all puppets to the wealthiest entity in the universe, the WEF, World Economic Forum. And as you watch this video, they are working tirelessly at turning our world into a Mad Max spin-off. The movie starts with Max skillfully and savagely catching a lizard, only to eat it alive. And that is exactly what the WEF wants you and me to do. They are funding most major news networks to write articles about insect and lizard consumption. They openly state it's their goal to base our entire protein intake on bug food. Suddenly, this Nooks scene is no longer a cheap reaction bait, but rather a canary in a coal mine. But surely we won't get there. We live in a democratic society. We could just vote leaders like Immortan Joe off, right? That is precisely why the WEF promises there will be no elections in the not-so-distant future.
You do not even have to have elections anymore because you can already predict and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections?
Now, you might ask yourselves, in a world with no elections, who gets to rule? And Mad Max answers this question as well. It is the one who controls the resources. Immortan Joe controls it in the movie. In reality, WEF acquires all the land and real estate they can get their hands on. The WEF further explains their strategy in one of their mantras. You'll own nothing and you will be happy. Perhaps you've noticed the middle class can't afford to buy property anymore. That is by design. The tools and machinery are more advanced than ever in history. Therefore, it is easier to make homes now than ever. Yet, the housing market is astronomically expensive. That is because elites can milk you to the maximum as long as you don't own your property. You can't afford to confront them and lose your job if your rent is due. The movie takes this concept even further. The desert people give their kids to Immortan Joe because they depend on the resources he controls. They depend on water. I bet many of you didn't even internalize that all these child workers, the so-called warpups, are taken from the thirsty. Oh, surely that is a step too far. Every horrible thing I mentioned came directly from the WEF's mouth, but at least they can't take our water away. Wrong. Here's a video of them saying water is not a human right.
NGOs vertreten, die darauf pochen, dass Wasser zu einem öffentlichen Recht erklärt wird. Das heißt, als Mensch sollten Sie einfach Recht haben, Wasser zu haben. Das ist die eine Extremlösung.
And the children are high on the hill, far away from their parents, where they can be brainwashed without obstructions. As far as children's indoctrination in real world goes, Just take a look at how most Western classrooms look nowadays. You'll hardly see promotional materials for learning calculus or trigonometry early, no glorification of knowledge and skills. Just ideology, party-approved clothing, and membership signaling mantras. I fear many watching this video won't take what's being said too seriously. Even if you can't find any flaw in my argument, your brain might simply categorize it as some sort of weird crossover between reality and fiction. If you're listening to these words passively, I implore you to tell your neighbor that water is not a human right. They should eat bugs, and they shouldn't own a home. Just think about saying those words out loud. You feel embarrassed just thinking about it. Well, that is precisely what presidents, kings and billionaires are telling us right now. A few weeks ago, I heard someone say Immortan Joe distributes water in a very inefficient way. People can't catch it all in their little cups. It gets absorbed by the sand, and therefore most of the water is wasted. That is a complete nonsense. Immortan's goal isn't to quench everyone's thirst. His goal is to demonstrate power. Plus, if the people weren't thirsty and malnourished, they might be strong enough to rebel. So from his perspective, this artificial waterfall does its job perfectly. Hopefully, the footage speaks 1,000 words, and I don't need to explain that powerful people worldwide use this exact tactic daily. Immortan Joe refers to his wives as breeders. Nux is classified as a war dog, and Max as a blood bag. Immortan says they are all his property. They are all dehumanized. They are all his slaves. Some might think slavery is long gone from the real world, but they couldn't be more wrong. There are more enslaved people in the world now than ever before. Children in Africa as young as 5 work 10-hour shifts in unstable mines, digging up cancerogenic materials. Some Middle Eastern countries import foreign workers and confiscate their passports so they can't leave. Workers can't even move freely within the country without personal identification. Not that they'd have the time or energy to do so anyway, as their work shifts are often 14 hours long. The only way they get sent back home is once they get seriously injured and are no longer useful. That, my friends, is slavery 101. Well, that is it. At least as far as the meaning of the film goes. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. If you did, press the subscribe button and turn the notifications on. For better or worse, I'm not sure you'll find this type of analysis on any other channel. And since we're so small, it might be hard to find us through the search bar again if you don't save the link. This is where the second part of the video starts. We still have a lot of ground to cover. Camera, trivia, effects, actor performances, the guitarist, and boy is most of it good. The movie won 6 Academy Awards, the most of any 2015 movie. More importantly, it dominantly won some categories. For example, the best film editing. The winners from subsequent years measure up? I don't think so. Hacksaw Ridge, Dunkirk, Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm a huge Queen fan, and even I'll say Fury Road stands head and shoulders above Bohemian Rhapsody. Regarding the lead role, I'd say Hardy did a good job with limitations in place. Hardy playing masked characters was a meme at the time. I think the reputation made him the perfect choice. The moment he finally takes the mask off his face is super satisfying. Charlize Theron as Imperator Furiosa is just spot on. I think she was done wrong not to have been at least nominated for the Academy Award. But the real star of the show is Nooks.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Nooks is so thoroughly brainwashed, he exudes childlike innocence. He is so deprived of love and attention that he'd gladly sacrifice his life if it meant he gets 5 minutes of genuine appreciation. His day-to-day existence so tragic. He doesn't fear his tumors, he tries to befriend them. As his half-life draws to a close, his desire for approval from the only fatherly figure he ever had grows. On a side note, what an incredible play on words to call young cancerous kamikazes half-lives. Thankfully, his kamikaze attempts fail, and he gets to meet at least one person who genuinely cares about him. His character grew, and when he finally sacrificed himself successfully, it wasn't for nothing. He's played by Nicholas Hoult, and to be honest, some of his previous work is pretty dodgy. Nonetheless, whenever an actor shows traces of greatness, I tend to give them a pass for their worst performances because they often have to take roles they don't really gel with in order to pay bills and get their name in the mix. So, for this role alone, I believe Nicholas gets a small seat among cinema legends. Immortan Joe is an 8 out of 10. Strong, solid performance, but lacks a character-defining line. If you never watched the original Mad Max from 1979, you probably don't know Immortan is played by an actor who helped establish the Mad Max franchise all those decades ago. Ride Eternal and rest in peace, Hugh Keys Byrne. Nathan Jones as Rictus is perfect. For those who recognize his face but can't remember where it's from, it's Troy. Another side character, Splendid, gave us an all-time great line. She said bullets are like anti-seeds. You plant one and something dies. But the most memorable side character has to be the guitarist. If there was ever an example of over-the-top done well, this is it. He is played by Sean Hape, a real-world musician better known as Iota. Fun fact, that guitar from the movie was very real and weighed over 130 pounds and shot gas-powered flames. The movie is Christopher Nolan-like in that sense. Over 80% of the effects seen in the film are practical, including stunts, makeup, and sets. One scene that isn't particularly realistic is when Splendid grabs onto an exhaust pipe, as these pipes heat up to almost 200 degrees Celsius. We can't discuss unrealistic scenes without mentioning the 160-day ride scene. That is the one scene that is just flat out stupid. Let's do some simple maths here. An average motorcycle spends 1.5 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers. Say you ride 500 to 1000 kilometers a day. That means you would spend more or less 10 liters per day. So, if you ride for 160 days, you'd need to carry 1.5 ton of fuel. Not to mention that riding intensively for 160 days is enough to circle the Earth multiple times over. But one lousy line doesn't ruin a movie as great as this one. Director George Miller spent nearly 30 years making it into reality. Yes, you heard that right. He first came up with an idea in 1987, but had to postpone it over and over again due to a multitude of factors ranging from 9/11 to the Iraq War. He hired his wife Margaret Sixel as the editor and gave her 470 hours of footage to edit. It took her over 3 months just to watch the darn thing. But in the end, it was certainly worth it. You heard my take on Mad Max, and I'd like to hear yours. Were you aware of powerful elites saying all those things? Do you agree with my take on actors' performances? Whether I opened a whole new perspective for you, or you think I'm nuts, let me know how you feel. If you enjoyed these 20-ish minutes, I have 3 other videos on my channel. You might enjoy those too. As I'm still finding my editing groove, all 3 have a different feel. I used a scientific approach to calculate the chances of escape in Shawshank Redemption. I offered a spiritual interpretation of motifs in No Country for Old Men. And my personal favorite is a narration-type essay about Forrest Gump. To help this channel grow, share the link on a site like Facebook, Reddit, or Discord. Just 1 or 2 people sharing could signal to YouTube's algorithm to do its magic. I'm really proud of the fact that over 100 people chose to subscribe and click the like button on some of the videos, and I hope some of you tuned into this episode as well. Take care everyone, and remember not to trust the system.